Hi, today I'm going to be talking about a topic that is quite controversial, and that topic is on parental discipline, and I mean parental discipline of children. Now, the reason I want to talk about this today is I've seen on YouTube, now I see a lot of YouTube videos, some of them just pop up in my homepage. I've got no idea why, but they're there, so if they look interesting, I will have a look at them. And I think I see some on Instagram as well. And some of these are about children and the way they talk to and treat their parents. And I'm talking, young kids under, before they become teenagers and once they're teenagers. And I get horrified the way some of these kids talk to and treat their parents. And I've been thinking a lot about it. I was watching one last night which really sort of got under my skin a wee bit. And it made me start thinking about what it was like for me growing up as a child born in the early 50s. And what parental discipline meant for me back in those days. Now, when I was a kid, I don't know whether it's because Dad was a bit of a tough old sod, but he was very loving, I have to say that. But the one thing that I knew, and that all of us kids knew, was that if Dad said something, that was law, and you did it. And Mum was very much the same. One of the things that we learnt was that you never set one against the other, like asking Mum if you could do something, and if she said no, then running off and asking Dad. If we ever did it the other way round, it was twice as bad to do that, because you never ever went behind Dad's back and went off to Mum to see if you could get approval to do something. So we learnt very early in life that that wasn't a way to get to do something that one or both of your parents didn't want you to do. So as we went through life, I know that we used to get up to a few hijinks now and again. And we'd get the typical kick up the bum if we were caught, or a bit of a slap round the backside with a open hand. But we never ever thought of that as being abuse. It was discipline, and it made you think that you had done something wrong. That was the punishment that you were going to get. It never left marks or anything like that. It was never what you would say was physical abuse. It was just a good slap round the bum with a hand, or threaten for a kick up the bum. Now, I know these days you're not allowed to discipline children by using any sort of physical force. Now, as I grew up as a kid, it was, even at school, the boys used to get the cane, or you'd get a strap on the hand, and that was just part of discipline growing up. We hated it, we were a bit scared of it, but it wasn't long lasting. But by God, you learnt right from wrong. And I think now one of the problems that exist is that telling a kid that they can't do something and not having sort of the parents, a lot of parents don't follow up with any activity to reinforce that. Now, we knew that if we did something wrong, we would have to suffer for it by usually having a privilege taken away. And that privilege might mean that our bikes were locked in the shed for a week or a month, or we weren't allowed to do this for so long, or we weren't allowed to do that, or we had to go to bed early, or there was always a follow-up, and both parents stuck to that. There was nothing like, oh, poor thing, I know it's not fair and blah, blah. And, that's all right, come round here and give me a big cuddle. No, if you did something wrong and you had a privilege withdrawn, that was it. You knew that was your punishment. Now, one of the things that our parents never ever did to us was yell at us. We were never ever yelled at, like I hear some people and I see on videos, parents and trying to yell at their kids to tell them something's right or something's wrong. And I knew a family that used to do this, where the mum used to yell and scream at the kids, and it was like water off a duck's back for those kids. It just meant absolutely nothing at all. They thought, oh God, here goes mum again. And, they'd block their ears. That's not discipline. My idea of discipline that I grew up with was having something taken away from you, a privilege, and having it really hit home. And it was quite a severe privilege. We had a pony. You weren't allowed to ride the pony for a month, or something like that really hurt us. And that was how we were made to suffer. If it was something that we were caught doing quick, you'd just get a quick slap or a kick in the bum or something like that. But most of the time the punishment was taking away some sort of privilege. And that really hit home with me and my brother and my sister. Now, one of the things too that we never, ever, ever did was talk back to our parents. Because we knew, we might have done it maybe before our memory even kicks in, but I can't ever remember talking back to my parents, because I knew that if I did, I knew that would have been a slap across the bum or a kick up the bum treatment. It wouldn't have just been a take a privilege away. If I had ever talked back to my parents, that would have been instant something. Fortunately, I never ever did that. And because of that, I grew up, the whole lot of us grew up, or, my brother and sister and myself grew up knowing that you never talk back to your parents. And if they asked you to do something, you said, yep, okay, I'll go and do it, even though you didn't want to do it. It was like, if you ever said no, it was, tell me why you don't want to do it. And any excuse we had was never ever enough. I remember I did that once to my mum. She wanted me to go and do something, and I went, and she, and I, I'll go and do it. And well, I could see that she was not really happy about it. So no, I'll go and do it. And never ever did that again, because I could see I didn't want my mum getting really angry with me, because it hurt me. I didn't like my mum being angry with me. So most of the time when they would ask us to do something, we would do it. And a teacher often said to me one day, I remember, it doesn't matter what you're asked to do, whether you want to do it or whether you don't want to do it. If you know you're going to have to do it with a smile on your face and just tell yourself you're going to enjoy it. And so whenever I was asked to do something and I knew I didn't really want to do it, I would tell myself, okay, I'll go off and do it. And I would look for the positive side of having to go and do something that I didn't want to do, something that I'd been asked by my parents to go and do. They never asked anything unreasonable. Everything that they asked of us was to be expected, and I never found anything unreasonable other than the fact that it might have interfered with my playtime. But that was just too bad. If they asked, we went and did it, and that was it. Now, following on from that, as I grew up and got married and I had children, I made sure that the kids knew who was the boss of the house. And the boss of the house was my husband and myself. They learnt you don't go and pit one against the other. asking one to do something and then getting a no, so going and asking the other one. They never did that. I think one of them might have tried once, but they learned not to do that again. My children have never, ever spoken back to me. They've never argued with me. We've talked, we've discussed, but we've never had an argument or a shouting match or anything like that, because I learnt when I was growing up how my parents got me to be disciplined, and I appreciated that. So I made sure that I used those same techniques with my kids. And at that stage, you were still able to give your kids a bit of a smack, and I did give mine a bit of a smack round the bum or whatever now and again. But it was never abuse, and they learnt when the hand came out and it sort of touched skin, slap, that was the message that they'd done something wrong. And to this day, my kids never ever talk back to me. If we talk, we'll have a discussion now. I mean, they're in their 50s and we have a discussion and they might disagree with me, but never ever have they ever talked back to me in a disrespectful way. And for that, I can be truly thankful, and I put it down to the fact that I probably mirrored my parents' method of upbringing. And now my two daughters, having had children of their own, their children as well don't talk back to them. The kids, I get on good with all the grandkids. They always treat me with respect. And I just feel thankful that we've never had the situation where kids have been allowed to run rampant in the house by doing things and saying things that are disrespectful, that are over the top, being just damn naughty. Okay, they've done naughty things in the time, but they knew that if we found out about it, there would be a punishment. And we've dished out punishments the same, withholding privileges and things like that. We've done that, and my girls have done the same thing. But the one thing that we have done is been very firm and at the same time been very loving with them. And when I see these videos of these families on TV, on YouTube and that, and I think, how can you let your kids behave like that? And I know they have all these problems of ADHD and all this sort of stuff, and there's always these problems. It's always too easy to put an excuse to it. As far as I'm concerned, the parents have to take control. And I look too at, when you compare it like with the animal kingdom, you watch a couple of, lion cubs with their mum, and they'll be playing around and jumping on her and chewing her ear and something, and as soon as they overstep the mark, she'll come around with their paw and give them a whack and sets them back on, they know they've done something wrong. I've seen that with monkeys, same thing, with monkeys playing around with their parents or, with the mum, and when they overstep the mark, they'll either be, elbowed out the way or given a bit of a whack. So I think I see the same thing with us as with the animals. You've got to set boundaries of who's in charge, who's the one that makes the decisions, who's the one that makes the rules, and who's the one that has to obey them. Now, this isn't to say that kids aren't allowed to question, to have their own opinions, but they need to be taught how to come back to you without answering you back and saying, is it okay if we have a talk about this? Or can I just give you what my opinion is? And invite them into a conversation to discuss something, but don't let them answer you back and tell you what they're going to do and then just go off and do it. I just find it terribly frustrating with all this political correctness now about you're not allowed to discipline your kids with force, or you're not allowed to do this and you're not allowed to do that. And it really just frustrates me. I even think back to when there was something else that I saw about kids, and as they grow up and they start working, complaining about whether they have to pay board or whether they don't pay board or anything like that. My dad said to me when I went out to work, we're not going to charge you board, but, there's always a but, every week I want to see that you've put this much money into your bank account. And every time that I want to have a look at your bank account, there has to be this much money put aside every week that you've been working. So I did that because I didn't have to pay board to them. I was able to put the money that would have normally been charged as board into a bank account. And I had to front up all the time. And I knew that if I slipped up, then I would have to start paying board. Instead of putting it into my bank account, I would have to start paying board. And I kept doing that right up until I got engaged, and just before I got married, we decided we were going to buy a piece of land, a section, just a block of land, and build a house on it. I was able to go out with that money that I had in my bank account and buy that section of land for cash. Now, if they hadn't done that to me and I hadn't adhered to Dad's rules, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And I just thanked him so much for making that decision for me to do that, and for me sticking to his request so that I could buy a piece of land. Now, that's probably a little bit different than discipline, but it's one of the things that it's when you set boundaries for kids, when you set rules for kids. If you're going to set a rule, set the rule, but if that rule is broken, then there has to be an action that counters what advantage they had in that. And the action that would have countered my benefit of having money in the bank was then having to pay them board. And I didn't really want to have to do that. So just when I'm looking at all these kids and I look at all these discipline issues, it just worries me. I think, what's happening with these kids, even in the classrooms? You see kids misbehaving in classrooms. Never, ever would we have ever talked back to a teacher or behaved in a classroom the way that you see kids behaving in classrooms these days. So I can see this change that has evolved since I was a kid going to school in the 50s and 60s to what you see now of kids at school and in the homes. And I think, my God, where's this all going to end? And it worries me. And I don't know if anyone else has got any opinions on that. I'd love to hear your views. I know my thoughts and my ideas go back decades and decades, but it never ever hurt me. And I wonder what other people's thoughts are on this. So if you've got any ideas that you would like to put into the comments, I'd welcome your comments. And if you've got anything out of this video, if you would like to put a like, comment or share, or even maybe subscribe to the channel, there's going to be more of this coming up. So thank you, everybody. And by the way, my name is June. Thank you for coming along onto my channel, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.